and welcome back to another episode of The Greatest Show in the Galaxy, the show where I, the curator, discuss my personal favorite show of all time, personal favorite franchise of all time, Doctor Who. And today we are continuing our theme of Gallifrey being the opportune topic of the month, and to avoid what happened last time and to avoid a shenaniganizing incident, I'm just going to introduce my guest right away before he has a chance to screw me over. Soda, how are you doing?
Doing good, my man. Doing good. Long time no see.
Yeah, this is like record timing introduction for me, like under a minute. I'm getting pretty good at this.
Yeah, so what happens when you're on frequently.
Yeah, let's see if we can get through the birthday section record timing. A lot of people today, oddly enough, not a lot of really significant people. A lot of villains, though, which is really interesting. So, obviously, we're counting down from the 7th of February all the way up to the 13th of February, which is where this episode is supposed to be uploaded. Now, we've got several people on the 8th. This is pretty funny and somehow is loosely related to a topic that we talked about off air right before we started the show.
Ooh, interesting.
Trini Woodall. You have a face of you don't know who that is, right?
No, but she kind of looks like someone, Melora Hardin a little bit.
Okay, so she has her own British reality TV show with her partner in crime called Trini and Susanna, where basically they just pick out proper clothes for random people on the street. And both of them got to play robotized versions of themselves on the game station in the episode Bad Wolf. They were in that room.
Oh, yeah, with Captain Jack.
Yeah, where he pulled a gun out of his ass and shot them both.
Yes!
So she played an android version of herself called Trin E.
That's awesome. Okay, cool.
Okay, now, double fun fact time. Both Trini and Susanna brought their show to Israel a couple of times. Years and years ago. That's how I know them. That's how I was familiar with them before I watched the episode.
Yeah, so did you go see them then, or?
No, it was on television.
Oh, gotcha.
A reality show. Now, fun fact number 2 here. Do you know what her real full name is?
No. Like I said, I never heard her name until today.
Sarah Jane Duncanson Woodall.
Oh, dear God.
Yeah. I literally just learned about it today. So it was just as much of a shock to me as it was to probably a lot of people who
the universe works in some strange ways sometimes.
Yep. And speaking of the universe working in mysterious ways, next, also on the 8th, we have, let me just make sure I get the name right before I show the picture, Mallory Blackman. This woman has just one singular credit in all of Doctor Who. Can you guess what it is?
Director.
No, but you're on the right track.
Oh.
She wrote the episode Rosa. The Rosa Parks episode. In my opinion, my humble opinion, best Jodie Whittaker episode.
Yeah, that is one I still remember, especially with it being revealed that Graham's the one that's got to be the person.
That episode won all the awards as it should.
Yeah,
and in my opinion, like I said, it's the best. Slight second being Power of the Doctor, but also on the 8th, moving on, we have, may he rest in peace, Mr. Roger Lloyd Peck. As seen in this picture, obviously he played the character John Lumick, the creator of the Cybermen in an alternate universe in the episodes Rise of the Cybermen and The Age of Steel, but he's probably mostly remembered for being
Barty Crouch Sr.
Yep, Bartimus Crouch in my personal favorite Harry Potter film, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire.
Yeah, who is father to Barty Crouch Jr., played by
David Tennant.
Yeah.
And they also played opposite one. Well, technically, they didn't play opposite one another in those episodes, but
Yep.
it was still the character, right?
Oh yeah, pretty cool.
And on the 9th, we have Mr. Morris Berry. Not to be confused with Marvin Berry.
Yeah.
In this episode, as you can see in this episode, he is a director of key episodes in the Second Doctor era, notably the Moon Base, the Tomb of the Cybermen, and the Dominators, featuring one of my absolute favorite robots from the classic era, the Quarks. Please, someone bring those guys back in the modern era. He also obviously played a character called Toland in the Tom Baker episode, The Creature from the Pit. Also on the 9th, we have, let's just make sure I get the name right, Mr. Clive Swift.
Yes.
And
yes.
And this is actually what was a surprise to me. He played a character called Jobel in Revelation of the Daleks, the Colin Baker story. But of course, as seen in the picture, he's mostly remembered as playing Mr. Copper in the David Tennant episode Voyage of the Damned, who of course later in that same season was revealed to be the mastermind behind the Subwave network with the whole Mr. Copper Foundation.
One of my favorite characters of the Tennant era. But for me personally, this made it even more fun for me because I've known Clive Swift for a long time prior to that as the constantly irritated husband, or basically he was in a sitcom called Keeping Up Appearances on the BBC that I just absolutely adore. He played the husband of this overbearing wife. It's a sitcom. I highly recommend it. Richard Bouquet, great stuff.
Yeah, and something that I didn't know. Did you know that his character in that episode in Voyage of the Damned has a first name? It's not Mr.
Yeah, I knew, but I can't remember what it was. I just read it recently too.
Yeah, it's Baildon.
Yeah.
Well, there's a bit of not interesting trivia for you.
Oh, and also, he was in the King Arthur movie Excalibur many years ago too.
I was waiting for you to bring that up. It was like weird that you went for the sitcom and not that one.
Well, because the sitcom is the thing I'm most associated with because that was part of my childhood. And again, like you have access, you have BritBox, you have a way to get it. I recommend you check it out. It's on there.
The sitcom, right? Now,
yeah, Keeping Up Appearances.
I want to check that out because I'm seeing a lot of Doctor Who alumni who are in that sitcom. So I definitely will at some point. Now, on the 10th of February, I actually really like this guy probably more than most people, Mr. Robert Shearman. He's primarily known as a writer, particularly for Big Finish. He wrote a bunch of Big Finish stuff. But in particular, he wrote such notable Big Finish episodes as The Holy Terror, The Chimes of Midnight, The Maltese Penguin, Jubilee, Deadline, Scherzo, 100, and 100. But he also wrote a TV Doctor Who story. Can you guess which one it is in the modern?
Give me an era. Give me a Doctor.
I can't do that because that would be a dead giveaway.
Okay. Is it early or last?
Okay, Russell T Davies era.
Thank you. Russell T Davies era. I probably won't be able to name an episode, but I'll say it's from Tennant's first season with Rose.
The episode was Dalek. The reintroduction of the Daleks.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's why I couldn't give you the Doctor.
Okay, fair. I was actually not far off. I had Rose as the companion.
Yep. And Rose was kind of the reason for...
That is a great episode. Unfortunately, it introduces us to Adam, but it's a great episode.
Yeah. But, by the way, side note, do you want to hear a headcanon fan theory that Rob Shearman has?
Sure.
Okay, are you sitting down for this?
Last I checked.
Okay, so in his mind, in his headcanon, Wilfred Mott, okay, Donna Noble's grandfather, is Frobisher. Frobisher, the
Yeah, the
shape-shifting
penguin that you
alien
love.
penguin. Yes.
Do explain.
He doesn't explain. He just thinks, nope, that's Frobisher in disguise. Look, keeping an eye on the doctor from afar.
Interesting. I would like. Wow. Okay.
Of course, that
Weird.
would kind of imply that Donna is half Whiffer Drill.
Well, you know, wibbly wobbly stuff, right?
Yep. Now, where was I? On the 10th, we have. Is it the 10th? Sorry, it's one of those. Their names are not listed on the official website, so you have to look elsewhere. Yep, it is the 10th. Mr. Uh, Barry Newberry. Hold on, where's the picture? There he is. He's a production designer. A production designer on no less than 14 serials, 62 episodes in total.
Wow.
Such notable, and those episodes are On an Earthly Child, Marco Polo, The Aztecs, The Crusade, The Time Meddler, The Daleks' Master Plan, The Ark, The Gunfighters, The Dominators, The Silurians, The Brain of Morbius, The Mask of Mandragora, The Invisible Enemy, K9's debut, by the way, and The Awakening. Some of these episodes are among my absolute favorites.
So he sounds like he did a lot, especially in the early years.
Yeah, he was like from the William Hartnell era all the way up to the Peter Davison era.
Respect.
Yeah, that's respect. Now, on the also on the 10th of February, yeah,
let me guess.
no, no. I apologize for everything bad I might have said about this person's character. It's Peter Purves. Initially introduced as the character Morton Dill, but apparently he impressed William Hartnell so much that he decided to persuade the people, the powers that be, to recast him as a companion. The companion, Stephen Taylor, and in my opinion, the most useless character in all of Doctor Who, one of my least favorite companions. But that being said, Peter Purves, still alive by the way, 84 years young, has played Taylor for the better part of a season, as well as reprised the role on dozens of Big Finish stories. He's also played the Doctor on these Big Finish stories. He's also narrated a lot of Doctor Who novels on audiobooks. Like, I don't like the character, but the actor is a huge, one of the biggest contributors to Doctor Who of all time.
Totally
and
fair.
he needs to be respected for that reason alone, I think. On the 12th of February, we have Mr. Nabil Shaban. Now, prepare yourselves for this. You might want to take a step back. He played the character Syl in the Sixth Doctor stories Vengeance on Varos, Mind Warp, as well as reprising the role on the Big Finish stories Mission to Magnus and Antidote to Oblivion.
So was it a guy sitting there with like a little person thingy attached to him using his head? Like, how the hell?
I never actually bothered to look that up, but I'm pretty sure that in all the scenes that he's in, he never really moves. He's just that creature sitting on something, which I'm assuming there's like a man standing underneath.
That's what I'm thinking. That's what I mean. Yeah, like that's what I was thinking.
Like, because I mean, it's a slug, and you never really see it move. Like, all you see the movement is obviously the face and like the arms.
Because that would be very tiny person otherwise.
Yeah, or maybe he's just a tiny person sitting down. But moving on also on the 12th, we have Mr. Gareth Thomas. He's played a couple characters on Big Finish, and most notably, probably for the viewers here, playing the older Ed Morgan on Torchwood. However, the main reason he's on this list is because of his character Kalendorf in the Big Finish series Dalek Empire. Seriously, cannot recommend that series enough. Like, it is great. Well, at least the first two series, which he actually appears in. Right now, I'm currently making halfway through the third one. not as good as the first two, but probably because he's not there. Like he was like one of the major characters there. Now on the 13th, we're getting ready to close this out. We have Mr. Donald Sumpter. This guy is specific. He has 4 credits on Doctor Who, mainly playing villains. He played Enrico Casilli in the Wheel in Space, Commander Ridgway in the Sea Devils, Erasmus Darkening in the Sarah Jane Adventures episode The Eternity Trap, and I swear I did not plan this, Lord President Rassilon in Hellbent.
Oh, that's why he looks familiar.
Yep, the episode which is the background of today's episode.
You're really good at that.
I swear I'm not doing it on purpose. It keeps happening. And well, finally on the 13th, we have Mr. Joseph First, who played the villainous character Zaroff in The Underwater Menace, the second Doctor story. And I'm not gonna lie, the only reason he's here is because he is responsible for one of my absolute favorite moments of extreme, pure, unadulterated, unapologetic overacting in the history of Doctor Who. After he shoots the leader of Atlantis, he's like, "Nothing in the world can stop me now!" I love that moment so much, and thankfully, it's one of the few moments from that serial which is not a missing episode. Stupid
That's
BBC.
Funny. You're gonna have to send me that clip.
Yeah, if I can find it, yeah, but like, it is the cliffhanger, and you can kind of tell that the director was like, can you tone it down a bit? Because, like I said, it's the cliffhanger, meaning the next episode has to start with that. So it's very clearly a reshot where he significantly tones it down. Like, it's like, nothing in the world can stop me now. So,
Jesus.
Yeah, I love that moment so much. It's a great episode overall, but I mean, that moment is just the one that sticks with me. So the incredibly long list of people we had today, thank you all. We quite literally could not do this without you.
What was his name?
Hold on. Joseph First.
That's kind of funny that he went from first to last, don't you think? Another thing you didn't plan.
What are you gonna do? I mean, at least I saved the best for last.
There you go.
Right? So unfortunately, I did not get to do what I thought I was going to do, which is just power through the birthday section. But let's talk about Gallifrey for a little bit. So, thankfully, there's a lot less to talk about in this episode because we mostly talked about the important stuff last week with the history of Gallifrey and the Time Lord chapters, the noble houses, and Rassilon, Omega, and the others. So I figured right now, since you've seen most of the episodes we're about to talk about, let's just talk about a history of appearances of all the different times we've seen Gallifrey on screen in the modern series. Now, obviously, we're going to kind of skip some of the mini episodes because we really want to focus on the big major appearances, and obviously the mini episodes tie into larger episodes we will be talking about. But, I mean, obviously, the first time we saw Gallifrey in the modern series, and actually, come to think of it, our first ever proper look at Gallifrey ever was this thing right here in the episode The Sound of Drums, where the 10th Doctor explains his past and essentially his childhood, or what he thought was his childhood on the planet Gallifrey, and in relation to his relationship with the Master. First of all, beautiful imagery right there. Beautiful picture right there. Now, the idea of the capital of Gallifrey, the big city right there, the Panopticon, whatever you want to call it, being enclosed in a giant glass dome has been referenced a bunch of times. Obviously, in the classic era, we never really had the budget to see this thing come to fruition. but it's been referenced in novels and comics for years before that. But actually seeing it in action in the episode, even though it was a really brief flashback scene, it was just great. And just this random Pridonian Time Lord standing guard over the.
What is the point of the dome?
It's never really explained. I mean, unless there's like a VNA novel that I haven't got to yet, because they're really not easy to find. And I've only read the first one, like finished it last week. But I guess it's just to protect the city itself from the outside world. Hold on, you haven't seen The Invasion of Time yet, right?
Can't say I have, no.
I recommended it to you last week after you finished The Deadly Assassin.
Right. No, I did go back. I didn't go back and watch it.
Right, because in that episode they do actually step outside the main city, and there's like a couple of scenes taking place outside where they're just walking around in the Gallifreyan wilderness.
Okay.
So, well, it was just to defend against the wild Shobogans and other natives of the planet Gallifrey running around the wilderness. But also, obviously, that episode really introduced, again, unless it was introduced in one of the VNAs, which I haven't gotten to yet, which I will. Hold your horses, don't push me. But no, I wasn't talking to you. It's okay. But this introduced the idea that the children of Gallifrey are being taken from their families, or rather, their noble houses, at the age of 8, and went to the dry lands of Gallifrey to stare at the untempered schism as part of their initiation. And obviously, as mentioned in that episode, some people would be inspired, some would run away, and some would simply go mad. Following this, they are being sorted into their proper chapters. Hold on.
Like Hogwarts?
Yeah, pretty much like Hogwarts. Hold on, I had the perfect picture that I found, and I showed it to you last week, I think. The 6 Gallifreyan chapters.
Yes.
Perfect.
You sent it to me, right?
Yeah, the 6 Gallifreyan chapters, the crimson and orange Pridonians, the green Arcalians, the heliotrope.
Do you not have it?
No, there it is.
No, I mean, oh Jesus, I brought it up on my own. Sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, the crimson and red and orange Pridonians, the green Arcalians, the heliotrope Atraxes, the subdued colors of the Sandalus or Scandalus, whichever way you want to call it, the blue colors of the Ceruleans, and the what was it? The Dromian chapter, which I cannot remember. I cannot at the moment remember their official definition of the color. But yeah. So the age of 8, you stare into the whole of time and space, and then based on that, you're being sorted into your own house. Like, seriously, what the fuck, Time Lords?
I know, right? Ugh.
I guess that kind of explains why they're so cold and, emotionless most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, yeah, from the very start, like from episode 2, as a matter of fact, we get hints to it in episode 1 of the modern series, but from episode 2, we're already introduced to the idea that there is no Gallifrey anymore. Like, Gallifrey was destroyed. I mean, obviously, the name Gallifrey doesn't even appear yet. It's important to note. The word Time Lord is kind of offhand referenced by the Great Intelligence in episode 1, but outright mentioned several times in the second episode, The End of the World. But the name Gallifrey doesn't make its full appearance until the Runaway Bride, the second Christmas special. But right at the
why is it just like they just said the Doctor just didn't want to talk about it? Like,
well, obviously, okay. You would assume so, but I mean, there really was no point in mentioning the name Gallifrey until that moment. And obviously, if you rewatch that episode, it's a pretty big moment when he says it.
That's true. Yeah. That's when they're sitting in. I want to say it was a car park, but I could be wrong. But when they're sitting,
no, it was in the hidden Torchwood base under the Thames. He says that to the Rachnos Queen, the giant spider.
Okay, yes, you're right. Sorry, I was thinking of another moment in the show.
He says the name Gallifrey, and she's like, "They murdered the Rachnos." So yeah, it was a big moment, as opposed to in the classic series where it's just an offhand mention in like the Time Warrior.
Yeah.
Yeah, but still, pretty big moment right there. I mean, that's in a way kind of summarizes the some of the main differences between the modern series and the classic series. It's like they give much more importance to these things, like the way regenerations are being handled in the modern series. They give much more importance
Right.
to regeneration as opposed to in the classic series.
Because like they're all so big, with the exception of Capaldi's from Smith.
No, they dedicated an entire episode for it.
Oh no, but I was sorry. I was thinking the moment, just the moment.
No, not the moment. I mean, I just mean that they styled the whole episode around it.
Sorry, I was misinterpreting that. Yeah.
The only main exception to that rule, I think, would be the Tom Baker, but even then, it's kind of a stretch where he sees a future version of himself all throughout the episode. Moving on, back to Gallifrey. So right at the start, there is no Gallifrey. Gallifrey was destroyed in a war. We don't know who yet, until the arrival of an episode written by Mr. Rob Shearman, the episode Dalek, where we learned that, yes, you guessed it, it was the Daleks versus the Time Lords in what was known as the Last Great Time War.
Naturally.
Now, little bit of sidestepping in the middle of that, because around, like, before they brought the show back, and again, we're stepping into novel territory. A territory I'm not very familiar with or well versed in, at least not as much as in the TV show or the Big Finish releases.
Yeah.
But there was such a thing called the War in Heaven, a war between the Time Lords, various other races, and a mysterious enemy, which is simply known as the Enemy. And because it's complicated, it was kind of an amalgamation of different things. But the main point is Gallifrey was destroyed in that war and brought back, because I mean that's kind of really that planet's whole thing, is that it gets destroyed and brought back. It's like that again, something we talked about before we went on air, Top Gear. It's like that meme of like, oh no. Anyway,
yeah, pretty much.
It's like Gallifrey is destroyed. Yeah, or maybe the Loki show. Gallifrey is destroyed. Yes, very sad. Anyway, so so there wasn't really that much of a clarification if the War in Heaven actually happened, or if it was something completely different, which it turns out it was something completely different. The Last Great Time War, a war specifically focusing between the Daleks and the Time Lords. Could you imagine if the way people speculate and overanalyze things that they do in nowadays was around in 2005? Because remember, there was that, but not to the same extent.
Oh God, it would be
that it is right now. Yeah, I mean, again, remember 2005. YouTube doesn't exist yet.
No,
there weren't these shows and channels specifically dedicated for these types of speculations. Could you imagine the theories that would have run wild about the War in Heaven before they announced the Time War?
There were, but I mean, like you said, it's not like it is now. Like, I mean, that's what message boards and stuff like that were. But I could only I could only imagine what it would have been like to be in a Doctor Who message board.
Yeah, because again, the loyal, faithful fans, they never really stopped following the show after it canceled. No. They bought the VNAs, they bought the comics, and it's like 10,000 storylines taking place in between 89 and 2005. So,
yeah there's more than just the movie.
Of course, yeah. The movie was just one part of it. So as we previously mentioned, this was the first time we actually properly get to see Gallifrey in the modern series, all the way in season 3 of the modern series. Now, in David Tennant's final episode, officially, because obviously he came back a couple of times, we see this image right here. I apologize, I couldn't find the full image, but I mean, just this image of seeing the dome broken into pieces with like all these Dalek ships like on the floor, like last day of the time war, last moments of the Time War, after we've already been introduced to the idea that the Time Lords are back. James Bond is Rassilon apparently, and he's planning to end all of time as it is. Or as they call it, the final sanction. So before we move on to the other main topic, what do you think about just it's the end of the Time War? And I know that you're not quite as well versed in the Time War itself as I am. Hold on, let me just mute our good friends over in the Benverse group. Where is the mute button? Never mind. But I know you're not quite as well versed in the rich lore of the Time War as I am, but just the idea of seeing the Time Lords coming back and knowing that their ultimate goal is to destroy time itself.
So
how does that hit you?
So knowing that now, like it is pretty cool. But I still remember the first time I figured out what was going on. I had started, as you know, with Matt Smith, and then I'd gone back and saw David Tennant's stuff. But to see that they're bringing back the Time Lords, and it was the first time like I had truly seen stuff involving the Time Lords, was really darn cool. Like I got the significance of it. Even now, it's still pretty dope to see James Bond, as you said, Timothy Dalton as Rassilon, and then Claire Bloom as the Time Lady, who some people say is the Doctor's mother, and which is interesting. Who she also was in the movie Charlie Chaplin many years ago.
I said more on that later, more on her later.
But yeah, no, it like you said, I'm not as well versed, but I still understood the significance, and I still think it's pretty cool.
For me personally, because like I said, like I previously said a number of times, I started with Tennant. Like I started with New Earth, which was his first proper episode as the Doctor, not counting the Christmas Invasion.
Fun.
I mean, what?
Fun episode.
Yeah, really fun episode. But so I kind of started with his first season with Rose, and obviously when I went back and watched the Christopher Eccleston era, obviously then I kind of watched it a little bit out of order, but I mean that's Doctor Who for you. So I watched some of the episodes with Martha before I watched the Eccleston stuff, and I've already well versed myself in the realm of Doctor Who before this happened. And again, this is years ago, well over a decade ago. I don't remember if by that point I have watched all of the classic series just yet.
Oh wow.
But I do know that I was at least aware of a lot of things from the classic series. In particular, how the Time Lords look, how they dress, and how a lot of stuff about Gallifrey. I knew who Rassilon was. I already knew a lot of stuff about the classic series. So when that cliffhanger happened in the ending of the first part of The End of Time, when like Timothy Dalton, you see him turn, and it's revealed that he's actually Rassilon, and there's Time Lord standing behind him. And he's like, "This was the day."
You hear the voice first.
Yeah, no, you hear his voice, and you see his face for a brief second, but you still don't know who he is just yet until he turns around. And this is just great directing, great editing, where as soon as he says the word Time Lords, you see the people with the Time Lord garb standing behind him.
Right. For me, though, it was like when I heard the voice, it was before I was like, oh, Time Lords. For me, it was like, oh, Timothy Dalton, because he's got a very well recognizable voice.
Yeah, it didn't happen for me because his voice was all over the trailers leading up to that, so I didn't have that surprise. And obviously, I was kind of spoiled with images before I watched the episode of him being there, so I knew he was there. I just never realized who he was.
Gotcha.
Just yet. Until I watched the episode.
By that point, I'd seen Hot Fuzz and his Bond films and stuff like that. So,
no, I meant who he was playing, not who he was, because I do know who Timothy Dalton is.
Okay,
but so yeah, he turns around and he's like, this was the day the Time Lords return. There's a couple of Time Lords standing there behind him. He's like, for Gallifrey and for the end of time. And then it turns to behind him, and you see this giant, massive room in the Panopticon with like hundreds of Time Lords standing on these. I can only describe it as the Senate from Coruscant on Star Wars.
That's the same thing I think of too. Yeah,
and it's like, I think my heart stopped at that moment when I saw that in 2009, end of 2009, start of 2010. But yeah, I think I almost had a heart attack when I saw that. And then obviously it turns out that the plan wasn't just to execute the final sanction, which is what they planned to do originally. It was also bringing Gallifrey back from outside of the Time War itself into the physical universe, which, as you can see here, Gallifrey as a planet dwarfs planet Earth.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, and they sort of succeeded in bringing Gallifrey back for like a hot second, thanks to the Master. And when you see Gallifrey in the skies of planet Earth, but then obviously the Master sort of turns on the Gallifrey, the Time Lords, immediately after the Doctor shatters their one and only link to the physical universe. So the Master sort of forces himself, in a rare moment, saves the Doctor and forces himself back into Gallifrey itself, into the Time War. And, more on him later towards the end of Capaldi's era.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, there's a bit of a problematic thing there because the John Sim Master essentially sacrifices himself to save the 10th Doctor, which in a way it was a perfect tying of the bow on their relationship between the Doctor and the Master. But the fact that Stephen Moffat brought him back at the end of Capaldi's reign, where he was even more extremist, and like he was like, I will never stand with the Doctor. Like for some reason he hated the Doctor more. So all of that character development from the Russell T Davies era was gone.
So I've never seen that episode, but is it the Master after that moment, or is it the Master before that moment?
It is the didn't we talked about it in our recap a couple of years ago. It's the one with the Cyberman where Bill turns into a Cyberman, and you got the Master and Missy.
You know what? I'm sorry, I don't remember.
Well, yes,
I'm sure we did. I just don't remember.
Then in that case, yes, that was the Master after that moment.
Okay.
Like they mentioned that after that he was sent back to Gallifrey. They cured him of his drumming condition in his head, and so he escaped in a TARDIS and sort of helped create the Cybermen in the end of that episode.
Gotcha.
But all that is kind of irrelevant. I've been saying for years now that it was the wrong Master in that story. Like, it is the John Sim Master, and it's John Sim acting the way he played the John Sim Master in the time, but the writing it's written for the Anthony Ainley Master.
It was a caricature of what we love.
Yeah, it was a shallow version of that Master. I mean, I still love the John Sim Master, but again, it feels like the wrong man. It feels like Stephen Moffat, while he did great with Missy, I will give him that. He wrote one of the best characters in Doctor Who in Missy. When it comes to that Master, I think he failed. I think he wrote for a different Master, right down to the wardrobe and the goatee. Like, anyways, then I can harp on this point. Would you shut up already? Hold on. I'm turning my phone off. There we go. And
that's why I always keep mine on silent, on vibrate, I should say.
Thank you. We've got great friends, but shut up.
Yeah.
Anyways,
bad timing.
Yeah. Seriously, guys, shut up. Anyways, so next time we see the Gallifrey. Well, aside from a brief appearance in the name of the Doctor, but the less said about that, the better. The next time you properly see Gallifrey is in the poster behind you, the 50th anniversary the day of the Doctor. And oh,
Yeah.
look at that. It's the last day of the Time War again, because we didn't get enough of that in this episode. So, again, me ranting about Stephen Moffat going back to and rehashing the same plot lines again. I'm a pretty big chunk of that episode, the 50th anniversary, takes place on Gallifrey itself, and right now we actually do get to see the destruction that the Time War has had on the planet Gallifrey up until that moment.
Yeah.
And speaking of moments, the War Doctor himself
The
broke
picture
into
you just had up, the one before that, is very Star Wars-esque.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to think of it. Yeah, Gallifrey in and of itself is very Coruscant-y when you really stop to think
Makes
about
a lot
it.
of sense, especially with the episodes I saw last week.
Yeah, it's like Coruscant with a dome, like a smaller Coruscant with a dome in it. But yeah, the War Doctor himself manages to break into the Time Vault, breaks into the Omega Arsenal, and takes out arguably the most destructive weapon the Time Lords have ever created. And that's saying something considering who they are. But yeah, he steals the moment and walks all the way to a barn that he used to run away to in his childhood when he ran away from he used to run away from the academy, and that is where he contemplates whether or not to use that weapon or not. Meets two future versions of himself, and then go ahead.
I know I was going to ask. Like I've seen that a lot of times, but I don't recall that ever being mentioned in the episode in the episode that's the barn he used to go to, unless I just totally missed it every time.
It's in that episode that I hate the very mention of. Listen, where look, Clara basically was there when the Doctor was a little kid. Wow.
Okay, so that's when we find out it's the same barn. Okay.
Yeah, and obviously it's also mentioned in a lot of novels and Big Finish stuff that he used to run away into a barn. Like there's a method to the madness of that is Stephen Moffat. Stephen Moffat doesn't just put these things there for no reason. Sometimes sometimes he does, but most of the times there's a method to that. But anyway, he ran into that barn, obviously where he met two future versions of himself, and that was when they all three of them decided to not destroy Gallifrey this time around. Instead, they were going to save it, and it took 13 doctors, no less than 13 doctors at the time, to save Gallifrey. They flew all their TARDISes into the surface into equidistant intervals on the planet, around the planet. Equidistant, so grown up, but yeah, and they sort of froze Gallifrey in a single moment in time in a stasis cube somewhere in the end of the universe, while all the million Dalek spaceships were all firing on the planet at the same time, got caught in their own crossfire and blew themselves up. And somehow some of them survived, but I mean that's just.
I mean, they always survive.
It's the Daleks. It's kind of their thing that they survive. Like Gallifrey's whole thing is that it gets blown up and comes back somehow. The Daleks' whole thing is that they keep surviving.
Yeah, that's basically with all the Doctor's major villains. They somehow
like the Master and the Cybermen and all that. Now, we don't actually get to see Gallifrey in the time of the Doctor, Matt Smith's final episode, sort of. But we do get mentions of it, and in the final episode of Capaldi's first season, Death in Heaven, we're being led to believe that Gallifrey did come back because obviously Missy's still around somewhere, and she knows where Gallifrey is. But when the Doctor goes to find Gallifrey, it's not there in the old coordinate that she gave him. But we do actually get to see Gallifrey properly at the very end of one of the best episodes ever made, Heaven Sent, where Capaldi's Doctor, I should say, after spending 4.6 billion years in his own confession dial, finally manages to break through the wall and reaches Gallifrey. And we see this thing once again. So, I mean, do you remember much from that episode? By the way,
I do. I remember a lot of this, and it is some of the best imagery I've seen in Doctor Who.
and really the best storytelling and the best acting from Doctor
Yeah.
Who. It really is just a one-man show, that whole
Yeah,
episode.
it's Peter Capaldi's tour de force as the
Yeah.
Doctor.
With a slight interference from Clara, but whatever.
But I mean, like it's his episode.
It is definitely his episode,
Yeah.
and really, for a lot of people, that is the episode that solidifies him as a top-tier Doctor.
Yeah, it's a great episode. Yeah.
Yeah, Capaldi for a lot of people is their favorite Doctor. For a lot of people, not myself, obviously, but I mean, this episode and several others is a big, major example of that. Now, after this big, major setup of the Doctor is pissed at the Time Lords for what they did to him, you know there's going to be hell to pay.
Yeah.
The name of the episode is Hellbent. You know he's out for blood, for killing Clara, for trapping him in the confession dial, for everything he had to endure just to get back to Gallifrey. So what he does is he goes back to the barn and he really gets on Rassilon's nerves. So he sends a firing squad to take him out, and what do? They join him. And all the Doctor can say is, "Get off my planet." So he banishes President Rassilon from the planet Gallifrey. Big, major, ballsy move.
Yeah.
And then obviously he gets rid of the High Council themselves. And right when the Doctor is at the highest point that he's probably ever been, it'll end up just being another Clara fest where he goes to save Clara and she gets a one-up on him. And, you know what? The less said about the rest of that, the better. I hate that finale, but it had a lot of potential. It started out really, really good, but as per usual, with whenever Clara is involved, falls apart at the seams right at the very end. Now, speaking of this guy, Rassilon, specifically the what's his face, the Donald Sumpter variant of Rassilon.
If Timothy Dalton couldn't make it, that's literally why.
Yeah, he was supposed to be there. He was supposed to be in that episode, but it was unavailable, unfortunately. And you know what? I think it's better that way because, I mean, he was only there for like 5 minutes, and he gets banished. Like,
still, Peter Capaldi acting against Timothy Dalton, like,
it would have been great, but again, I don't think the writing would have been there. I mean, the episode kind of makes Rassilon kind of look like a wuss. But I mean, whatever. Water under the bridge. In case you're wondering what happened to that variant of Rassilon, after that, he sort of joined forces with the Cybermen and became the Cyber President. In the comics. Like, this is comic book lore. This is not like TV lore, Big Finish. No, this is I believe the more recent Titan run of the comic, the Titan Comics run of Doctor Who. And that really is the continuation of Rassilon, but none of that is really relevant because the next time you see Gallifrey, which is conveniently left out of Capaldi's final season, no idea why they didn't go back to Gallifrey, but the next time we see Gallifrey, surprise, surprise, it's in ruin again. Because apparently the Sacha Dhawan master discovered something he wasn't supposed to, and he got really so pissed that he just destroyed all of Gallifrey.
What a baby.
Now, what?
I said, what a baby.
Yep. I mean, it's the master. But we already talked about how much we don't like the whole, even every new incoming showrunner undoes what the previous showrunner did. So like, Russell T Davies, Gallifrey's gone. Stephen Moffat, Gallifrey's back. Chris Chibnall, Gallifrey's gone again. But aside from that, like, knowing what it took to destroy Gallifrey the first time, like a million Dalek spaceships, the Doctor taking a weapon that can only be described as a weapon of mass destruction would not do it justice. To destroy Gallifrey, the Master just does it in 5 minutes, pretty much. Like that was easy for him. So, I mean, I suppose one could say that this is just how unhinged that version of the Master is.
I was gonna say, like, sounds like he's just gone full Joker.
Yeah. However, silver lining there, this douche is no longer on the planet. Like he's
Hmm.
off schmoozing with Cybermen at that point. And
Yeah.
like I said, the Doctor basically banished the High Council. He shot the General, forcing him to regenerate. And the Doctor pretty much left Gallifrey in a state of disarray when he left.
Naturally.
So, and again, it's a recurring problem for the modern series that Gallifrey doesn't make enough appearances. Not only he didn't make that many appearances in the classic series either, but
There's still more.
yeah, there's still not just lore, just so many massive plot points just get completely skipped on because we don't see Gallifrey. Like at least in the classic series, they didn't make that many big changes to the lore of Gallifrey every time we saw it. In a way, because no one ever actually conceived the idea of destroying Gallifrey in the story yet. But I mean, beside the point. So yeah, all of Gallifrey is destroyed, which actually, believe it or not, actually had a massive impact on the Doctor herself.
Oh,
Like
really?
she was not the same in that whole season after learning about what happened, and she spent the rest of the season trying to figure out the mystery of the timeless child and what could possibly so bad that it caused the Master to do this. And then we actually get all of our answers at pretty much at the same time the Doctor does in the Timeless Children, where we get introduced to the secret history of Gallifrey. Obviously, we talked last week about how Time Lords just always keep rewriting their own history, hiding the stuff that they don't like. We talked about Rassilon, Omega, and the other. No one really knows who the other is. We get introduced to this new character called Tecteyun, a Shobogan scientist and explorer, one of the first people to leave Gallifrey, and with a very primitive form of space travel. She found this mysterious child, brought her back to Gallifrey, discovered that she can regenerate. So she spent many years of her life and many generations of the child's life to crack the regeneration code and inject it into herself. And after she regenerated, he decided to add that code into every other Time Lord, but he decided to restrict it to only 13, which obviously then came, Rassilon and Omega and the discovery of space travel, time travel, all that. The Citadel was built, the capital, the Gallifreyans became masters of time as well as space, calling themselves Time Lords, as the Master said it with the utmost pomposity, or whatever it is he said in that episode. And while that giant, massive bombshell is being dropped on us, around the same time, while the Doctor is spending time in the Matrix learning all of that, the Master is outside the Matrix, making deals with Cybermen and essentially turning all the corpses of all the dead Time Lords into Cybermen, which he dubs CyberMasters. Cybermen with the ability to regenerate. Is there anything more scarier than that?
Yeah, I'd say that's actually honestly more scarier than a Dalek.
Yeah, pretty much. Now, in an effort to stop the Master and the CyberMasters from leaving, the Doctor threatens to use the Death Particle to destroy them, but she's then being rescued by Cocharmus, who then sacrifices himself to use the Death Particle and destroy all life on Gallifrey. And yet somehow the Master once again miraculously survives, along with the CyberMasters, who make their next appearance in Jodie Whittaker's final episode, The Power of the Doctor. But I mean, yeah, that is pretty much this right here is the last we've ever seen of Gallifrey. Gallifrey's gone again, and this time it's not just the Citadel is destroyed, all life on Gallifrey has been eradicated. And the CyberMasters are still somehow running around the galaxy, causing trouble to people.
It makes you wonder if Russell T Davies is going to bring it back.
I mean, I think especially at this point, what?
I was going to say, especially if there's this talk of like this quote unquote Marvel-like universe for Doctor Who, I wouldn't be surprised if it comes back.
And again, considering who a lot of people think the Neil Patrick Harris character is, and really it's going to be a decade anniversary story, the 60th anniversary, right? And when you really stop and think about it, seriously, stop and think about it, every single decade anniversary story in Doctor Who had something to do with Gallifrey. It was very Gallifrey centric.
Oh, interesting.
The three Doctors, Omega. The five Doctors, Rassilon. Dimensions in Time. Not to the same extent, but I mean, the Ronnie shows up and she's from Gallifrey. The 40th anniversary, Zagreus. going into Gallifrey's long distant past and long distant future, as well as its present. Day of the Doctor, saving Gallifrey. And, one can only assume that the 60th anniversary, whatever it ends up being called, is going to have something to do with Gallifrey. It's pretty much a theme at this point. So, do you have any closing thoughts on, nothing to say about the CyberMasters or?
Well, other than that's something like I do hope comes back. Like I hope we do see more of this type of stuff. I wish we had gone Timothy Dalton back in the day, but it is what it is. I hope we do see more of Gallifrey, expand on it even more. I just hope it plays a bigger part in Doctor Who, like you said.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it is again with the introduction of the Timeless Child. It's not really the Doctor's home world, but it's not really where the Doctor was born in. But it is the Doctor's home world. Yeah. Like that's where the Timeless Child grew up in. You can't understate that. And even if you buy into the theory that he is the other, or even if you buy into the
Valeyard.
What?
The Valeyard.
The Valeyard is like later in the Doctor's timeline. But even if you buy into what was implied in the Timeless Children episode, that the Doctor was then being regressed into a child and had to live their lives all over again, starting from the William Hartnell incarnation. It is the Doctor's home world, no matter which way you want to slice it.
Yeah.
So home is not where you're born in. Home is where, to quote Pumbaa, home is where your rump rests.
Pretty much. I'm a BC boy through and through, but I was not born in BC.
And there you go. So, again, I wish we get to see more of Gallifrey going forward. Don't oversaturate it. Like, don't have an entire season taking place on Gallifrey. But just show us more of Gallifrey and spend some more time to develop the planet itself on screen. There's, buckets of lore of it in novels and in comic books. And even there's a whole Big Finish series dedicated to just Gallifrey. 13 seasons going on 14 right now, just dedicated to the planet itself. So there's definitely a lot of stories that could be told in and around this planet. Just use it wisely. Don't use it sparingly and use it wisely. That's all I'm saying. But I mean, yeah, the 60th anniversary. We might get some more of Gallifrey, might not. For right now, the main threat we're going to see in that, or rather, seemingly the big threat we're going to see in that anniversary is, of course, Beep the Meep.
Yeah.
But that is a story for another time. There we go. I finally got it out of my system.
There you go.
So, anything you I think you already said your final thoughts. So, anything you wish to plug, sir?
Yeah, just the usual soda_the_Saxman Instagram and Twitter. Find me on this channel with 50 over on Fun with Flags. Find me over on the Let's Get Ready Network on the Blokes of Wrestling over there. And then every once in a blue moon, you can over find me doing a live watch along on Monday Night Raw or Friday Night SmackDown over on the Hotel Network, Nerd Network.
Yep. And you can find me, like Soda said, with him on the new show we started in memory of our good friend Ben, Fun with Flags, every Monday on this show, and on Taco's Geek Gauntlet later this week, as well as my own YouTube channel where I have this show, this ongoing series called Doctor Who Revisited, where I go through every single episode of Doctor Who from 1963 all the way to 2022 and review them. And occasionally I do other stuff on my channel, and sometimes Doctor Who related stuff. So yeah. seems like an appropriate enough place to end the episode. So we bid you farewell. Goodbye.